Justin Boots, the future is important to us, and our investment in the Texas FFA is our promise to support the next generation of leaders for Texas and the world. For decades, Justin has been a proud partner of the Texas FFA, and we strive to keep our core values of hard work and upstanding character aligned. Thank you to the members past, present, and future for being a shining example to their school, community, and family.
All right. Well, hello, Texas FFA, ag science teachers and stakeholders. We are back. And we are going to be back in person at the 93rd Annual Texas FFA Convention next week. But in the meantime, we are leading up to convention like we did last year with the Growing Our Future Leadership Series. This is an opportunity to bring subject matter experts together to talk about various topics that make us better leaders. Now, I'm going to tell you on a personal note, I don't know of too many leaders that are successful in their jobs without three important components to their game. Those are faith, hope, and resiliency. I believe that every leader that's ever been successful in business or in life, in athletics, in music, whatever it may be, they've got to have a taste of faith. They got to have a little bit of spice of hope, and they better have a lot of foundation of resiliency. And we have found some subject matter experts to talk about these topics today. We are honored to have Taya Kyle, John and Heather, who y'all know from last year's Growing Our Future, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their background, and we're going to talk about faith, hope, and resiliency.
Yeah, I'm Taya Kyle, and my husband was Chris Kyle. Some people know him as the American Sniper, but he just had such a humility about him and such a strong thread of country and his love of ag. His dream was after the spotlight, which he did not want to be a part of. That's a whole other story, but he had to be dragged into that by some other people. And his whole goal and dream was to make enough money to go buy some land and go live on it and get back to what he loved, which was some solitude, he said he was going to flush his cell phone down the toilet, just go out, and people would have to handwrite him a letter and mail it to him, and he'd handwrite one back to say, yeah, come on in. That was the dream and the goal. And so it's just an honor and a blessing to be able to participate in anything that the FFA does. And to be in a conversation with John and Heather, in addition to you, Aaron, is an incredible blessing. And I feel like I always feel Chris's spirit around, but I feel like it's got to be a happy spirit right now to be part of this group. So thank you for having me.
Well, howdy, everybody. My name's John Paul Dineen. This is my wife, Heather. We're full-time farmers in Waxahachie, just south of Dallas, about 45 minutes. We've been farming 30 years, dry land farmers, raise row crops, small cow-calf operation. We also are a part of the Texas Ag Memorial Day in Texas, which is very, very special to us. And a lot of the state FFA officers help us out each year at that ceremony down in Austin. So we're really excited to be here with you again today. We appreciate, Aaron asking us, inviting us to kind of share, some of our life with you.
Taya, when we talk about leadership, there's got to be a little bit of faith. You can't start a business without a little bit of faith. You can't, even just leaving your house, you better have a little bit of faith when you go outside. When Chris served, there has to be a little bit of faith. What would you say about faith in the aspect of life and being a leader, Taya?
It's a great question, and I strongly believe that what our warriors fight for, and certainly what Chris was fighting for, is freedom. And one of those freedoms is freedom of religion, not freedom from it. And I think that's a really big differentiation that we need to honor and respect. So there's a part of our culture, I think, that says, no religion, we're not talking about it. And for me, I can't tell my story without talking about my faith. That just is a part of who I am. I don't expect other people to have the same faith I do. And I don't treat them any differently if they do or don't. The truth still remains I'm here today with a smile on my face because of God. That's it. If not for him, if not for his grace, mercy, and love, and I don't say that in some theoretical academic way, I mean literally being able to see him work in the details of our life and our disaster and the tornado of events that happened in addition to Chris's murder. I could not have made it without God. I can see his hand in my life. And in the details, that is so miraculous to me that he will do that for every single one of us. So how can I lead without this strength buoying me up? If my life was simple and it were easier, maybe it would be easier to miss the faith component. Maybe I wouldn't feel that need for it, but I've been desperate. I've been at the pit of brokenness and despair. And the only thing that brought me through is God, personally and through other people. I've noticed there's a song that says, God put 1,000,000 doors for his love to walk through, and one of those doors is you. I felt God's love through other people over and over and over in ways that I know are him. So I couldn't lead without having that faith. In addition to that, I can lead with fearlessness, because that's what God has shown me I get to do. I get to be fearless when I'm prayerful and I say, okay, God, I don't know how you're working this out, but I trust that you are. I'm listening. I'm learning to be discerning. Let's go, right? Let's do this. And I think when you're leading, there's a part of leadership that has risk involved, great risk and great responsibility. So there was this part of my life where I felt like, quite honestly, I was just frustrated when I was talking to a friend of mine saying, I feel like God is asking me to jump off this cliff without a parachute, and I've done it before. I've proven I will do it knowing that he's the parachute. How many times is he going to ask me to do this, right? And this is like these scary things that's like, I know he wants me to lead here and go here, but without a parachute, without the reasoning, I can feel it in my heart and my intuition, but how is this going to work? And I realized some point in the last year, God was going to ask me to do that as many times as it took until I finally went, you want me to jump? I can't wait to see what you're going to do. Right? Like that was the part where he goes, I want you to do it over and over until you're excited about seeing what I can do. So for me, that's the most exciting part of faith. That is what makes me resilient. It is what gives me hope. If I didn't know that God was on my side, the world is too dangerous. It's too precarious. It's too unpredictable. Evil exists. How do we walk through all of that alone? I don't know how people do. I don't think that they do it all that well. And I'm going to wrap with this thought. I have had the opportunity to hear of some inside scoop of leaders that we in culture and media have lifted up as these great leaders who are atheist, agnostic, and I don't hold that against them. In fact, I thought, well, that's great. They're doing great things. What I have learned in the past year is that a lot of those, there was an undercurrent that's unspoken about that was not kind, was not compassionate, was not good. And I realized that some people would tell you that business is cutthroat and it has to be that way to be successful. And I strongly disagree. I've seen a lot of people who have led with faith, hope, resiliency, compassion, kindness, and their employees are happy and successful. We can have both. It's not a choice. So I'm going to go with you, Erin. Faith, hope, resiliency, those make the best leaders. You don't have to have them to lead, but I think they make the best leaders.
Got it. And John Paul, you are a leader, by the way, in the Texas Farm Bureau. We appreciate your service there as a director. And Heather, you're known nationwide because you were the farm. What was the title that you had?
National Farm Mom of the Year.
Yeah, so here I am with some pretty infamous people, and then I get to carry the anchor here. Tell us a little bit about faith in your life and the way that you see faith as being a leader.
Faith is a very important part of our life, and our life in agriculture, our life in several things. If you really sit down and think about it, each year, we're generally planting two seasons of crops. We're planting a spring crop and we're planting a fall crop. And, literally your life is on that little seed that you're putting down in the ground. And we're dry land farmers, so we have no control over moisture, whether it's too much or too little, the weather, anything like that. And all of your investment, almost, but 90% of your cost is put out there up front before that plant ever grows. All of your expense, all your money is spent waiting on God to provide what's to come later. And you have no control over that. That's where that faith comes in. Faith in the Texas Ag Memorial. That was one of those things. I am not, I am not an elected official or anything like that. And, to wake up with the yearning or the impression of the memorial that morning, that to me, I like to refer to it as, God was kind of handing me a ball. And it was my choice to carry that ball and run with it. I didn't know where I was going or how I was going to get there, or I could pass it off to somebody else. I chose to carry the ball, and by doing that faith, provided the way and provided the right people to talk to, all of the different doors, like you talked about, that opened. And there are a lot of doors when you're trying to do things down in Austin and trying to do things in the Capitol. You don't just, make one phone call and say, hey, I'd like to do this tomorrow. And they're like, okay, And so that's how the faith, provided, that. And so in our life, over the last 30 years, there's lots of times where, God showed up, that faith came through. Didn't mean that, the times weren't hard. Sometimes it did. Sometimes it took that problem, that struggle away, but sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it was a struggle that we went through, and the benefit, wasn't for us, but years later, sometimes there were people that would come up and tap you and say, you know what, when so-and-so happened, I saw that, and that helped me to see, that struggle happen through there. So
I think faith, from my perspective, being a farmer's wife, and I do share in the farm operation. I'm not in the tractor every day, but I share, and I feel like God designed me to be John Paul's helpmate, and so I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff with the farm, the family, and the memorial, and in a lot of ways I feel like I'm his, I don't know the correct term maybe, but his
support system.
Yeah.
When you come home, crushed because of the price drop or a storm that went through, you need somebody to talk to share with, to vent those frustrations and things, and somebody that's not going to criticize you when you're trying to be vulnerable, when you're opening up and you're sharing your hurts.
I credit my parents, honestly, for giving me the foundation to be that support system, because I grew up in a home that it didn't matter what happened. If it was a good thing, if it was a bad thing, whatever stress we were facing, there was always a phrase, and it was, let's pray about it. Always about maybe something, it's not a consequence necessarily. Sometimes we think, oh, this is a consequence for something we've done sometimes, and it's not that. Sometimes it's just, I need you to be the strong one, and I need you to be the one that people will see me through.
Wow. Y'all have no idea just how incredible what both of y'all have just shared is, really, to this conversation. So, when I think about faith in my life, it goes all the way back to when my mom and dad divorced. My father passed away, and me walking in on my mom one day, and I've not met Taya yet, so she doesn't know how tall I am, but I get my height from my mom. She was a tiny woman, and I remember walking in and finding my mom at the foot of her bed wailing up to God in prayer because we had nothing to eat. And I remember my mom's prayer was just, God, please bring us some food. Please give my son something to eat. But the words that I never forgot was she said, God, would you just give my son an opportunity? Now you fast forward years and years later, my oldest son, Chandler, and I are working in an orphanage in Chihuahua, Mexico. And I remember asking the lady that ran the orphanage, I said, Sister, what do you need? Do you need money, clothing, food? What do you need? Sister, what is your prayer for these children? And I'll never forget what she said. She said, Mister, I just pray that these kids will have an opportunity. Okay. Taya just told a beautiful story about God's doors. When my oldest son was in 4th grade, it was bring your daddy to school day. What does your daddy do? Now, I live in a community where we've got NATO pilots and doctors and lawyers and really cool jobs. And then we have Chandler's daddy. He's a professional beggar. He asks for money. How do you explain to 4th graders what you do? And I remember I went up to the board, and on that board, I drew a little bitty door. And I asked the 4th graders, I said, how many of you could get through that door? And they said, no, sir. And then I drew a really big door, and I said, how many of y'all could get through that door? And they said, yes, sir. I said, that's what I do. I make doors bigger. And when you shared that story a while ago, I thought about my mom's love and her faith. And I got to witness it firsthand in a moment of desperation, that what she wanted was that faith and that hope and that resiliency for me as a parent. Not that she could solve all my problems, but that she could give me the groundwork, give me the foundation, that in life I could go out and become the person that God wanted me to become, because I had those tools. And those doors, I loved your analogy, Taya, those doors. How many doors? That's how I met John, Paul, and Heather. We would not be on this call today if not for somebody else that went before us, faith, hope, and resiliency. And so I couldn't have scripted what y'all said any better. It's phenomenal, the stories. Okay, so let's move on. So faith in my life, the way I describe it to kids, here's what I tell them to do. I said, draw a circle and put 4 prongs on it. And each one of those prongs, I want you to number 1 through 10. 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, okay? And then you're gonna have family, you're gonna have faith, you're gonna have finances, and you're gonna have social. And I want you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 of where you think you are on that scale, on that spoke. And then I want you to connect those dots. And I want you to see what kind of tire you're going through life on. What's your ride like? Well, how do we balance a tire? You got to tap a little balance on there. And I always tell them, if you'll take that faith prong and you'll tap a little balance on that faith prong, it always seems to draw all the others back into balance. You got to learn. How important is hope? We got to have a little hope. We got to, because I think if we didn't have hope, life would be just one series of despair after despair. So I think we got to have hope. Taya, how important is hope to leadership?
Because I realized he doesn't want this any more than any parent wants hardship for their kids. Parents do want for their kids to have hope for a better day. They do want them to be resilient. They want them to know, baby, this doesn't last forever. It doesn't. It's going to be okay. And your wounds will heal in time. And I think of God from this eternal perspective saying, I don't want this for you, and I know you're going to be okay. It's not a but, it's an and you're going to be okay. So Heather, when you said that God trusts you, that is just like it hits me in the heart, because I believe that is so true. Y'all are eloquent in what you talk about. You're steadfast in how you talk about what's probably most of our worst nightmare in losing a child. And you show that, I mean, the way you described your harvest and your crops and the rain and the hope, I mean, they're just like this roller coaster. I think that you're a beautiful representation of what God has been wanting from you, for what you said, Heather, that I trust you to tell other people. It's really inspiring and really beautiful. And I believe that that is the goal here. I mean, I do think of this life on earth as just a mission. It wasn't supposed to be this party. We are supposed to have joy, because joy makes us resilient. And it's also a mission. We're here in like a spiritual battle. And will we keep our faith? And it sounds like God has shown no matter what comes your way, you will keep your faith. And that is such an inspiring thing that I don't think you're probably going to know the impact on the world until you get to the other side, because every life you do know you touch through that is going out and touching thousands, if not millions of lives as the ripples go out. So again, I'm just blessed and honored to be listening to you and hearing your heart. So thank you for sharing that. The hope part of this, Erin, I had a friend tell me one time, she's a pediatrician and brilliant, and she said suicide is often from a place of hopelessness. It's a place that I don't have hope that things can get better. And when you're in the pit of despair, how do you have hope on mankind or a world to deliver when we're all flawed and the world is messy? For me, the hope comes from God saying, I know one more sunrise, one more sunset is all I have to get to, right? It's Marcus Luttrell said in his journey, he was known as lone survivor, right? And he said he was dying really in the desert, and he would just draw a line in the sand and tell himself to get to the next line. And for me, it's sunrise and sunset, because sometimes that nighttime pain is the worst. And you just have to know the sun is rising, the sun is setting, get to the next one. With that, my dad, my earth dad, he said to me one time when I said, I know you love me, but is it because you have to, or do you actually love me, who I actually am? And his eyes kind of filled with tears, which was very unusual. And he said, Taya, the sun rises and sets, and I love you. It's as certain as that. I take that now to the spiritual level of God, our Father. And I think that I'm so in love with sunrises and sunsets. And I think it's because it shows that it's consistent. It's always going to come. And with that, there's always hope. And it means that every time you see the sunrise and the sunset, God, your Father, is saying, so my Father says it, I love you. That's a constant. As long as that's happening, I love you. And there's hope for something better. So I think leading with hope is huge. We can't look at especially with, I don't want to harp on media, because there are good things there too, but when we are incentivized, I guess, to be angry or fearful of all of the things happening in the world, people want us to feel that way, because that's what puts us into action on their side, right? Like they make us pick a side. That's not the truth. It's just, they're not just this truth or that. There's hope for all these other parts of the equation that aren't going to be part of the narrative. So for me, lead with hope. Let people know that what you're seeing out there, what people are telling you, those aren't the only two options for right. Those aren't the only two outcomes. I can't even imagine what John and Heather have seen with their crops over time, when it feels like all is lost and then something changes that's like, that never should have happened. And here it is. I've had a lot of surprises in my life where I thought, there's no way that I see, and I'm an overthinker, and I can think of a lot of different things and outcomes, and I'll be like, I never would have thought of that one. So as I get older, I start to realize, why even bother trying to think of all the outcomes? Chances are I'm not going to imagine the one that's coming down the pike. So I can just kind of relax and say, okay, I'm going to be excited about what you're going to do. So that's kind of where I land, and I think that's contagious in leadership too.
So, hope is, it's very important in all things. Hope, in your life, in your work, what have you. In agriculture, we talked about planting that little seed. That is the hope. You're planting hope for the future, hope for that harvest, hope for, good things to come. When you're, when we talk about the Texas Ag Memorial, sometimes that is hope for those families, because they are letting the state of Texas say thank you to them. Thank you for their loved one. And I think that relates some hope to them in their time of loss in that. And I think that's important. In work, I think that in your career, hope is important. To try to wake up, for the day and try to look for something good, look for some hope in that day, whether it's raining outside or snowing or whatever, the situation is. Maybe you're going to work, but you know that there's going to be a problem waiting for you when you get there. Try to be hopeful and be hopeful for a good outcome, that you're going to, figure out a way to solve whatever that issue is and to get past that, and kind of, chalk that up on the board of experience of, hey, we were able to do this and work through that. And I always like to say, no 2 years in agriculture are the same. Just because it worked last year doesn't mean it's going to work this year. Doesn't mean what you did this year is going to work next year. But you have that hope for the future, that hope for going forward, and dealing with those things just one day at a time. Just kind of taking what's in front of you and what you've got to address, working through that. At the end of the day, hopefully you can be thankful for what was provided to get you through that, whether it was solving a problem or somebody that crossed paths in your life that was able to speak into some things and help you that way.
I think hope, it's super important. And I think sometimes when we don't have it, I think God gives it to us as a gift, because I think sometimes it doesn't come naturally. And I guess I'm tying back to faith, but they're all wrapped up together for me. And God has given me a pretty optimistic spirit, and I feel that's a gift. I feel blessed that He did that, because life sure could get you twisted up and down and not feeling hopeful. And I think on the days when it doesn't come naturally, when it's not, when you wake up and it's just not there, I think that God grants it through, like John Paul said, people that you run across. Like Taya said, just hearing other people's stories and how that inspires you. You never know how that's going to affect another person. You don't know the impact that you're having. And I think it's planted all around us. And I guess that's a farmer analogy, but because we do plant the seed every year and we're hopeful, and I get so excited when I see those baby seeds popping out of the ground, because I'm like, look, there they are. And it's one of the most joyous times in our spring, in our lifetime. And the baby animals that are born every spring, and those are gifts of hope that God gives me in my heart. And I it takes all of those things, I think, to kind of it fills your cup, because you need hope every day. You need hope in leadership. If you're leading a team, you have to have hope that whatever project you're working on is going to be successful. Because as the leader, if you don't have that hope, how's your team going to have it? How's your team going to truly be successful if you can't lead them in positive, in a positive outlook? And so all of those things, I think, fill the cup and help fill in the days and give you hope when maybe you don't wake up to it, feeling it,
Now I'm putting myself in that position. I don't want to follow y'all. this is too good. But I think that one thing that y'all have collectively said that I want to kind of reference, because I have felt this way, but as leaders, we have to be hopeful because people are watching us. And, somebody talked about the despair and the suicide rates and, the sense of failure. The doors that Taya talked about. As leaders, sometimes we have to be hopeful because we don't know who's watching us that needs that at that moment. If we're very selfish, then we talk about hope for our own self. I need hope, God, give me hope. It's all about me. Well, it may not be about you. Maybe the reason why God wants us to have a little faith and a little hope is because there's going to be somebody that comes across our path in life that they're the ones that really need to lean on our example of hope. And so I think that both what y'all said collectively is kind of my takeaway when it comes to hope. And I've seen it. I've seen it, John, Heather, with what y'all talk about in agriculture. Some of the folks that I've worked with in the services. I mean, I get it. I've heard some horrific stories. And Marcus's story about the line, it's just incredible but that was hope. I mean, I talked to a POW where all he saw was a blade of grass, and that blade of grass was his hope. And, my board chairman, Mitchell Dale, one of the largest Ford dealers in the state of Texas, down in Dickinson, Texas, had just built his dealership. His dealership had just been built. And in 6 weeks after it was built, it was flooded. It was underwater. Millions and millions of dollars of inventory. When the drones flew over his dealership, you could see the tops of the vehicles. But Mitchell Dale is a leader of faith, hope, and resiliency. And I'll never forget it. He was at his ranch on that Saturday morning and he called me. He was drinking coffee and he's looking out in his pasture and he said, "Aaron, everything's going to be all right." And I said, "I know, Mitchell, everything's going to be good." He goes, No. Everything's going to be all right. And I said, "Why do you say that?" He goes, "Because I'm looking out here at the pasture and there's a new cow with a baby calf. And God's letting me know it's going to be okay." So sometimes being hopeful is not just about us as a leader. Being hopeful is about being hopeful because God may have that in place for somebody else to see your hopefulness. So let's wrap up with resiliency. And everybody that knows me knows I always talk about the 3 R's. Everybody always tells me, "Alejandro, we're going to get this country back. You got to get back to the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic." And I always tell them, "Guys, before I took this job, I used to work in a boot camp. I worked with truant offenders and I worked in a prison. And everybody I knew could read, write, and do math at some functional level. But you are absolutely right about the 3 R's. It's not reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's respect, responsibility, and resiliency." And I believe that resiliency is a groundwork for future success. It's not a matter of if we're going to hit bad times. It's just a matter of when we're going to hit bad times. And that's when we've got to be resilient. And that's where the faith and the hope kick in. Taya, no doubt you've been resilient. I've bragged on Taya Kyle. Before Taya Kyle and I ever even met for the first time, I used to tell everybody, if you got a choice, not that I didn't appreciate Chris's book, The American Sniper, but I've told everybody, if you really want to read a good book, you need to read American Wife. I'm telling you, there's a reason why, because it's going to give you a more civilian perspective on what Chris Kyle did. Taya, you and your family have been resilient. John and Heather, your family has been resilient. Tell me, how important is resiliency to a leader?
I think you're exactly right about it's not a question of if something's going to happen, it's when. And I used to think that verse in the Bible that says you're supposed to treat your trials and tribulations with great joy. I'm like, that's hogwash. Okay, that is what? Right? Like, why would we do that? And I'm starting to realize that there's a lot to it when it comes to faith and resiliency. When you start to realize how much you can survive and how much you're still here in spite of all this other stuff that happened, you are less fearful about the future. And I think that's why 365 times in the Bible it says, do not be afraid. We could be afraid of everything. And that doesn't mean you don't buckle your seatbelt in the car, right? I mean, there are common sense things that you just do, but you don't have to be fearful of it, even though you've experienced some really horrible things. We have a choice. We could be fearful and shut down that something like that's going to happen again, or we could say, I've survived it. You know, there's that quote, I've survived 100% of my worst days so far. And it's true. You're here, you've survived it. So I think that there's a part about animals and nature that teaches more about resiliency, I think, than anything else. So it's great, your friend with the dealership, and how John and Heather have talked about just getting excited about that, the seed popping up, because it proves not only hope, but resiliency, right? Things are still happening. The world is still turning. The sunrise is coming up. The sun will set tonight. And I have a funny story that I thought, if it is okay, I'll bring it up. But here's a story of how Chris learned some things with horses, right? We can learn so much from animals and land. And he was a big believer you never ever hit a horse. You can train them, you're patient, you ride it out, and he was really good at it. And I remember asking him one day after we'd been dating a while, I said, it was a little difficult when you first met me. I had those kind of protective walls up all around my heart. And I said, why did you stick around? Or, I'm so glad he did, but I thought he could have just walked away and I wouldn't have blamed him. And he said, well, dead serious. I've worked with a lot of difficult mares in my life. And I know if you just hang on and ride it out, I'll come around eventually. And I was like, this is hilarious because you just compared me to a horse, and yet it's romantic and true. And I don't know how you did all that, but not offended. I actually really like it. So it's kind of true. But, I think there's that resiliency, right? I mean, if you didn't know that you could turn a horse or a woman, it turns out, around by being patient and riding it out, you might want to be forceful or, do or die kind of thing, or dang it, turn around. But if you learn that just time, right? Just keep showing up, be yourself, be gentle, be true, and things will work out. And I think that's so true with life, nature. I believe that nature is one of the most healing things we have around us. And I think we can learn more from nature than just about anything else. I'm super passionate about roses. Don't even get me started about how many analogies I have with life and roses. But, God teaches us all of that stuff, and roses are extremely resilient. I think that we have to know that we were created to survive all of this. We just do. We have, this is going to sound like a shameless plug, but I don't mean it that way. The Warrior Collections, which you and I, Erin, have talked about, it's a jewelry line that we have, but the whole point of it is that we're created for battle. We are all created as warriors to survive the spiritual battle in life. And we don't always feel that way. I think we often feel vulnerable and very human and all of that, but our spirit is created for battle. God knew this world was going to be a messy place, and he knew there was one out there who was going to try to, jack us up at every turn. And John and Heather, I can see how strong you are. It doesn't surprise me that you would be under great attack, because you're a powerful force. And so why wouldn't, if there's a spiritual battle, why wouldn't the leader of one force try to take out the strongest of the other force? That's just smart warfare. And yet God says, do your best. These kids over here, they're not going to fall from their faith, right? It gives me chills. It's just, you were created to be resilient, and you prove it and you show it and you inspire other people. I think the best leaders say, yeah, we'll get hit. I'm sure we'll get hit, but let's get excited about how we're going to get out of it. Because we were built for this. We were made for this. So let's go strong when we get hit. Let's, roll up our sleeves and either be patient and ride it out like Chris did, just keep showing up, or, get some battle gear on and figure out, how God's got you set up to fight it. So yeah, I think you're right. Resiliency, you said respect and responsibility, huge, huge, huge. I keep telling my kids the way that I see sometimes the workforce going, if they're respectful, responsible, and show up, they're already in the top, 10 10, 20%, which is sad on our culture, but great, I guess, for the kids who are that way. So, and I think there are a lot of them in FFA. Let me tell you, they're learning a lot from nature and animals, and it's just a great organization. So thank you for letting me tie that all together into resiliency. But it's not just words. It's just flat truth.
You know, resiliency is important. You don't go through life with blinders on. You don't aimlessly, wander around and just, think everything's going to be lovely. There's going to be struggles. There's going to be problems and things like that. You're going to trip and fall. Some of those struggles, might be a mistake that you had made or a choice or something. Most of the time, it's probably going to be something that you don't have any control over. Just like in agriculture, we don't have control over the weather and that kind of stuff. But we have to be resilient when those things happen and try to dust ourselves off and figure out, how to, just like the old saying goes, make lemonade when you have lemons, kind of a thing. To try and do the best with what you have. That's something I always try and share with our kids. Our equipment's, not new, it's not the best, but we try to take care of it. We try to keep it in good shape. I try to teach them, skills of how to work on it, how to problem solve, because I can't tell you how many times, we go to the parts house and they say, well, it's no longer available, meaning they quit making that part. And so rather than giving up right there or getting frustrated and that kind of stuff, we kind of, step back and figure out, okay, how can we make that part? How can we adapt something to fix that? Because, we have to have that working. We have to go forward. We have to have that piece of equipment to do a specific job. And we can't go out and buy a new piece of equipment. They're in most cases, it's too expensive and it just doesn't fit in our financial plan. So you've got to be resilient. As a leader, you're going to have folks that they wake up on the wrong side of the bed and they wake up mad at you and they come at you with their bows and arrows, or they're a keyboard warrior, in today's time. And, you're kind of like, holy smokes, where did that come from? I didn't do anything. But, as a leader, you've got to be resilient. You've got to, try and understand that people are in different places. And when I say place, I don't mean physical, I mean mentally. And I mean, in their life, there's things going on. There may be struggles going on in their life that is making that attitude, that mindset, and you just happen to be the target that day. Do your best to, try and listen to them. Be fair and give them the time to hear what it is that they're upset about. Do your best, to try and explain maybe, why you were doing things a certain way or something. Try and, give them, the best answer that you can, but always know, they may not accept that answer. And that's not on you. You took the time, you heard them, you were respectful, you tried to address what their situation, their problem is, but you can only do so much. And some of that goes back on to them of whether, they accept that or not. Resiliency, with the memorial, like with us, you have to kind of remember the folks in agriculture that they have lost a loved one, or they have been severely injured in an ag accident. They had to the next day decide, are they going to go back into a life, an industry that just hurt them, either hurt them themselves by they were severely injured, or hurt them by their taking their loved one. And so they all had to make that decision of going back into that and continuing on, and that takes resiliency in there. And that's their choice. There's nothing wrong with the folks that decided, I'm not going to go back into that, and that's okay. But that also is some resiliency, in that.
I think resiliency in leadership is, like you said, Aaron, it's crucial. It is absolutely, I don't think you can be a good leader without resiliency. I think in our life, I think God called us to be farmers. And I believe this is across the board, not just farmers, but I believe with all my heart that God called John Paul to the field, just like he calls a pastor to the pulpit, a doctor into the medical field, and so on, and warriors into battle, and the many men and women who serve. I believe those people are all called, and it's not that God passes it out when he calls you, but he kind of does. When you've been given a calling, I think that God equips you with that. And we've all heard that, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And that's so true, because we've done and had opportunities. This opportunity right now, it's really unbelievable to be sitting here talking to the two of you. And Taya, we've not had the pleasure to meet before now, but it's such an incredible pleasure. And I'd like to step aside and just say something right quick, if y'all will allow. I just want to thank you and your family for your service. And I understand that service is not just, it wasn't just Chris who served, it was your entire family. And I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you so very much. I appreciate Chris, and I appreciate your whole family. Sorry, I just needed to say that to you. And Aaron, thank you for giving us the opportunity.
That's why I wanted Taya to get involved, by the way. From the books, all the stuff and everything that we had read, I can't wait for Taya to come to convention. She's never been before. I can't wait for her to see something that was a part of Chris Kyle. It's going to be new. And all of these great core values that we're talking about, there's no question, there's a reason that those 10,000 doors were there, Taya. This is good stuff.
Can't wait to see Heather. I'm gonna hug you for the longest hug. You're gonna be like, okay, enough, Taya. I'm like, no, I'm not yet. I just love you, and your heart is so big. I can just feel your spirit through that screen, and I have incredible admiration for you. I feel like a lot of times tears are the Holy Spirit. That the feelings are so big they can't be contained by the flesh, and I just think they come out in tears and stuff. And I just feel that huge spirit, the love you have for your husband and supporting him, and just being that helpmate. And John, the fact that you recognize that and are so honest about how important it is to have somebody to support you in the rough times. I mean, you're a service couple, man. I don't know. It's a different battlefield. It's the same dynamic. It's really beautiful to see, and your vulnerability is, it's like leaving me. I don't know if I'm going to have a good cry after we get off this call or what, but I've got like this like heaviness right here, but it's a good, spinning of emotions of happiness and inspiration, sadness, pride, gratitude, all of those things to be able to sit with you. So prepare yourself. I'm just telling you, friend, it's going to be a long hug when I see y'all.
Well, it sounds like John, Paul, and Heather, y'all have to plan on coming to convention. So just giving you a heads up. I'll go ahead and wrap us up here a little bit. Heather, you said something that's really interesting that I want to share with you. When my mom and dad divorced and my father passed away when I was young, I didn't know a lot about my dad. And my mom, because it was a bitter situation, she never really had a lot of good things to say. And so I remember saying, Mom, just pack up anything that was my dad's, just send it to me. At least let me look through it someday. So, I was in college and I thought, well, I guess I should unpack some of this stuff and look at it and just see, what my old man was like. And I found some things in there that I was unaware of. So I knew my dad was in the military because when he passed away, they did a 21 gun salute. So I knew that he was in the military. I didn't understand it at the time, but I knew he was there. I knew my dad as a successful businessman. Okay, that's what I knew that he had done. He was pretty innovative. He was pretty successful. But what I found is that before my dad went into the service, he was a farm worker. He worked in the fields. And he used the GI Bill to improve his position. And I tell people that, like my dad, I work in the fields now. They just look a little bit different. And Heather, I believe that everything and every opportunity I've had, I've tried to walk through doors that got closed. But when I look at the last 20 years of my life, I could not be more blessed that my mom's prayer was answered, that I got an opportunity, and that more doors are open to more kids today and more teachers than ever in the 93-year history of the Texas FFA. And if that's not an example of faith, hope, and resiliency, I don't know what is. And I'll wrap it up with saying this. Y'all know Tom Ziegler. Some of y'all may know Tom Ziegler's on my board of directors, the son of the great motivator, Zig Ziglar. And Tom and I were talking one day, and he was on the East Coast visiting a university, and he asked the kids this question: what is the opposite of gratitude? And he let that sink into the kids. What is the opposite of gratitude? And he said the opposite of gratitude is entitlement. When you wake up in the morning and you're grateful and you're hopeful and you have something that's created a baseline of faith, you feel good. I've got a smile. I've got family. I got a rose. I've got a crop sticking up. I've got, even in the roughest times, God will send that little door for somebody to walk through to remind me to be grateful. And when I'm grateful, guess what? I feel better. When I'm grateful, I'm more hopeful. And I love, Taya, what you said, and I'm going to leave it at this because you said it so well earlier. I think the best leaders are leaders that possess faith, hope, and resiliency because they are an example for other leaders to be. And it is an honor to be on this call with individuals that y'all represent all of those. So thank you so much for taking some of your time. We appreciate you. We appreciate your stories, your testimonies, and your willingness to share them. There's a lot of people, I tell everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story, but not everybody's willing to share those stories. So